Welcome back to Sunday Sound. What is this show, Bill? What's the one that we're doing? Again, the morning comes early on a Sunday. It's Doug Lamers and Bill Landis on your Kings of Columbus Sunday Sound Off. We're talking about Ohio State's 21-17 win over Nebraska on Saturday. Next up for Ohio State is a trip to Penn State next week. We will preview that a ton on the podcast feed on YouTube, on the podcast feed on every podcast platform, and of course on Kings of the North. Bill, you and I will break that down, and we'll have a Kings of Columbus on Wednesday as well. So this is still a look back at what did and didn't happen for the Buckeyes in this win over Nebraska. We have multiple hundreds of comments and questions from tech subscribers, and we will let those kind of guide us through it, Bill. But I just finished my morning rewatch of the game and counting up plays and charting things where I said egads a lot. It was an egads kind of morning. So let's get to our texters and see how they're vibing after this Nebraska game.
We will. I think so. We've done this now after every game, and I think for a lot of those games, there have been things that people could certainly be concerned about. But then I always felt like once Sunday morning hit, there was a lot of like, okay, I slept on it. This wasn't the end of the world kind of thing. Not a whole lot of that after this game. Not that it was expected, but usually those are sprinkled in throughout all the F-bombs and stuff. And there weren't many of those. I think maybe I saw like one or two. So we did have Ryan just sent in simply like win your clunkers, which I think is one way to look at it, but that was not the prevailing sentiment. I think Phil, with this text that he sent in, got to the heart of how a lot of people were feeling. He said, ultimately, this game left me with more questions than answers. Yeah. Some of the same issues on defense were still there, and it feels like a better offense could have exploited them, like Oregon did. I agree with that. Ultimately, the offense made enough plays when they needed to, and the defense came up big in the big spot, and they won the game. But a lot of soul searching to do between now and next Saturday. Some folks were more colorful with their assessments, but I think Phil got to what a lot of people were feeling coming out of this game, which was just like, how could this team play this way coming off of a loss with an extra week to prepare kind of thing?
Yes. That I think is fair. And again, like, results really matter. If they had lost this game, I mean, I can't even imagine where we would be. And you and I both certainly thought they were maybe headed for a loss. And I don't know if the texters expressed that, but I have to imagine almost everybody watching this, every Ohio State fan, everybody listening, certainly felt like a loss was there. So there is some degree of credit for winning your clunkers, but as it relates to performance, I am like not taking this as a one-off, oh man, flat look ahead to Penn State coming. Like, there were too many things in place for this to make sense to be a solid performance. And I don't know that I thought the things that went wrong were fluky. You know, like I just thought like, okay, like these are things that are issues.
So Dan sent in this question, which I think you sort of just started to answer, but I thought was important maybe we talk about. He asked, is it possible that this was just a weird game and that we shouldn't look into it too much? You're not feeling that way after this?
Because I guess my question to that question would be, what's weird about it? It's not, I don't think Nebraska does something weird offensively or defensively that would throw them off. I don't think there is a part of Nebraska's teams that is unusually excellent, right? Because sometimes you can play a decent team that does something really well, and you say, well, they're not going to face anybody who has that the rest of the year. I don't think that's true. A noon start in Ohio Stadium is totally normal. I don't think that's it. I don't think that, I mean, like, I don't like trap game conversations anyway, but like between Oregon and Penn State, like, it's not like Nebraska's good enough to get your attention. So I don't think that's it. And then the thing that, and I have my Zen chart, the thing that I thought was, I thought the left tackle situation looked like the starting left tackle got hurt on the first play of the game. And they were in like, oh my gosh, we have to play somebody mode, as opposed to having an entire off week, knowing that was the plan. That was so bad, it looked unplanned. So that Okay, we understand that. That is a huge thing. We told people, right? Everybody knew that. Well, how you watching Ohio State, Nebraska? Watch the left tackle the whole game. Your eyes will bleed. But they had 2 weeks to get ready for it. So, and again, like that's going to change probably either by Zen Michalski's injury or just by choice. But that was their first best option to Josh Simmons being out, and it was horrendous. So I don't think that's weird. I think that's like indicative of like they do not know what to do at left tackle. So I think in the course of a season, you do have weird games. But now if we want to do this, I do think you can start to play like, where's their dominating game? Like if this is the weird game, what is the game on the other end of the spectrum opposite this? Because Oregon, they didn't win. We did think generally that was two teams that played well, right? But also they didn't win. And actually, like even the staff themselves had a lot of reactions like, we have things to fix off that. So I don't think you would put Oregon up as like, okay, that's how good Ohio State can be. Iowa, they did nothing in the first half. The preseason, like nobody tested them. And then Michigan State, like Aiden Childs didn't know how to play football by that point. Michigan State's gotten much better. And I think like this version of Michigan State would. So like, where's their good? If this is the weird, bad Ohio State, where's the balance of it? Because can't you start to like, what do you think their best game of the year is?
The Iowa game. Yeah.
Second half of the Iowa game.
I mean, in the first half, they ran the ball. They just didn't score touchdowns. Like, they ran the ball. It's not like they were in like non-functional on offense. They just didn't finish drives against Iowa.
It was 7-0 at the half. But I mean, they don't have like what Oregon did to Illinois on Saturday.
They don't
touchdowns on 5 of their 6 first possessions. Like that, like here we are, we're playing a good opponent and we are just absolutely taking care of business. So the second half of Iowa, but they shot themselves.
I think Ohio State's second half of the Iowa game was Oregon's first half of the Illinois game. Okay. But Oregon also like was dominant from the jump and then took its foot off the gas because it knew it had the game in control. Ohio State had to find another gear to pull away from Iowa, but it did. Like that is definitely its best game, far and away. Because I don't take anything from the first 3 games of the season.
I would still continue to say every time you say best game, I'll say best half, because you can't be up 7-0 at home at halftime and say that's your best game to me. And I understand they moved the ball, but they didn't catch stuff in and they had 2, turnovers that'll kill you. So. Okay, but I guess that's a good answer. That is, at least there is an answer there. So, okay.
But I don't think that does not rise to the level of the kind of dominance I think that you're talking about. And frankly, I don't know how many good teams in college football have one of those against another good team. Like Oregon does, I guess, against Illinois.
I mean, Indiana did last week against Nebraska.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like a really good team.
But I guess I don't even mean a really good team. I mean, like a competitive team.
Sure.
Like you can't control your schedule, but other than like the terrible 3 non-conference games that again, I don't think we gain anything from, like, and so I do think that's part of it. Like if we're balancing, well, we've seen how good they can be. Like we've seen it. We've seen them for 60 minutes do their thing. And this was just a little weird. I think it's more, well, you kind of been like waiting for a 60-minute dominant performance.
We definitely have
instead you got this. Instead you got this. So
we've not seen 4-quarter maximum capacity Ohio State against someone that was a power opponent. Which is why I also like I get the sentiment in Dan's question, because those weird games do happen in college football. Like you can pull a few from like Oregon. We're talking about Oregon. Oregon played a 4-quarter game with Idaho, right? Penn State played a 4-quarter game with Bowling Green. Like they happen. But yeah, I don't know that Ohio State has showed you enough on the flip side of that coin to really make that a viable excuse, I think, for what we saw on Saturday. And there was so much that was a bit like dysfunctional, especially on offense, that I don't know that I can chalk that up to weirdness. And then even on the defensive side, like, yes, they played better. and got some stops late in the game. But I also was watching that game thinking, like, man, if they were playing a better offense right now, they'd still, I think, be encountering some issues that they did not encounter against Nebraska.
Yes, I agree. I have my Zen chart when you're ready. Whenever you want to do the
okay,
Zen chart.
let me just. Eric said, "Woof, that offensive line performance was a sick face emoji, vomiting emoji, vomiting emoji, vomiting emoji." Nate asked, "What are they going to do at left tackle? Is there any good solution?" Javante, Justin Fry's disappointments on the recruiting trail are haunting this team in the worst way. No matter what happens the rest of the year, Day needs to send him packing if he's still the head coach of this team. Charles said, "Fix the offensive line." Dan said, "I don't know what's worse, that it took Zen getting hurt for them to try something else, a tackle, or that they had no other option worth trying. Either way, it's a failure on Justin Fry and Ryan Day." Those are the comments and questions that I grabbed relative to the left tackle. Now, please, your information.
So I agree completely with all of that. This is all of the worst fears of a fan base coming home to roost here. So Zen, they had 47 offensive plays. No, actually, I got to double check that, because that's 47 offensive plays total, but that includes the kneel downs at the end. So those were 3. So that's 44. So, and he missed 1. So 43 offensive plays that Zen Michalski was in at left tackle. Do you want to guess how many I starred as being like a non-functional? The performance at left tackle basically blows up the play situation of those 43.
17.
Oh, no. See, that we feel better. 10.
Okay.
10. But that's still like 25% of the time. And then on some of them, there was one where it's like, okay, it's like I'm writing down like Zen Michalski did okay, and Donovan Jackson got smoked.
Yeah.
And it allowed a pressure on Will Howard that blew up the play. There's another one where Zen Michalski did okay, and Seth McLaughlin got smoked.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, and then it's one of those like, is it permeating? Like that's not to excuse. And listen, like, you know, the other guys didn't get killed as much, but just again, we talked about it. And so a lot of this, we talked to some of this, we talked about if you guys listened to the KOTN postgame show on Saturday night. But to restate it here, I thought it was, and this is much more on the coaches. This is on the recruiting and the development. I don't think so. Zen Michalski, right, was committed to where? Louisville or Kentucky? Where is he committed when they flipped him?
Louisville, yeah.
So he's committed to Louisville. They miss on other guys in that class. They flip him late, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit to me like if you wind up with Mayan Williams taking all your running back snaps. And it's like, oh, is it? And people love Mayan Williams for a while. And then I think we over time got to the point like, oh, I think we all know this is not like a national championship number 1 running back, right? Like we saw the way all that ended, right? So, but that's not who the number 1 running back at Ohio State should be. It should not be a late flip from Iowa State when you miss on other guys, winds up as your starting running back in any situation. And there were more injuries at running back that created those than there were at left tackle here. This is one injury.
Zen was a significantly better recruit than Mayan Williams was.
Where was Zen ranked? Mayan was in like the 400s, right? What was Zen in the 300s?
Zen in the composite was 306 by 24/7's own rankings. He was 208. He was a 4-star prospect. Mayan Williams in the composite was number 624, a 3-star prospect.
Okay. I at the time thought like this is a step down for Ohio State. They should be recruiting a better tackle than this. Did you think in the moment? And I don't want to sit here and just bag on Zen Michalski. My point is, I think he is not at the level of talent that you would expect to be the starting left tackle at Ohio State. That is my main thing. And a lot of times your backups are young guys who are going to be starters who aren't quite there yet. And you wind up having to play them early. Like when Wyatt Davis had to come in and be a starter for Ohio State at right guard. You knew Wyatt Davis was going to be a starter at Ohio State. You just maybe didn't think it would be at the end of that season. But then it was, and he was ready.
Yeah.
So when those are your backups, then it's like, okay, like we understand you're just accelerating something. I think the arc of this career, from how he got here to what he's been since he's been here, this is more, we never planned for this person to be on the field a ton. And now he's on the field a ton. And the result is 10 out of 43 plays. I think it is almost non-functional left tackle play that blows up an offense. But it is not about him. It is about Ohio State putting him in that situation that I think, to be fair to him, he's not ready for it. Now, I guess maybe he would be more ready later, but he did have a whole off week to get ready for it. And it was there were whiffs out there. Mm-hmm. So I still think this is a lack of depth on the offensive line that is directly tied to recruiting and development failures more than, hey, you're a second stringer at Ohio State. You should be ready for that. That guy should have played a better game. That's not where I am.
I had no issue with them recruiting Zen. I had no issue with his path to Ohio State. I was actually pretty excited when they got him because I like the profile of guys who don't start their high school careers as tackles, who play something different. And Zen was a defensive end who was like skinnier and kept growing, but he had athletic traits and he became a tackle. And he really, I think, shot up recruiting boards a little bit before Ohio State got him. So like, I don't care where he was committed prior to Ohio State. Also, Louisville's not a bad program. He just didn't develop once he got here. It's far more about development than it is like recruiting for me. And I guess you can call it a misidentification in recruiting. I don't know that I would take it that far. I just know that to me, that is a reasonable profile of an offensive lineman to bring into this program. But then 4 years down the road, that guy needs to be ready to play, and he wasn't. So like both things are true, but I don't know that that's like I don't know that it's an indictment on recruiting, but I do think it is an indictment on Ohio State's offensive line development.
But it was not a plan A. Do you agree that it was not a plan A? That they go to him that late and flip a committed guy? Because didn't they try to get other guys they didn't get?
Yeah, that's been the case every cycle, but I still would have taken him anyway. Like I'm not like he's a 4-star regional recruit who was top 300 nationally who was committed to another power program. Like I would strongly disagree that like he out of high school had the profile of someone who had no business being in Ohio State's recruiting class.
So, but why? Okay, I will yield the point on that. They have not gotten a lot of they have missed on plan A left tackles repeatedly in cycles. Is that a true fact?
I think they have missed repeatedly on plan A tackles, and their development of the B and C has not been nearly good enough to make up for it.
All right, clip that. That's our clip. And Saturday was that coming home to roost.
Yes.
Okay. Because, and again, it's one of those, well, where would you go otherwise? Right? George Fitzpatrick? Luke Montgomery?
Which is, George Fitzpatrick is like it's the same conversation as Zen Mohalski a year later, right? Another guy with like kind of an interesting athletic backstory who you knew was going to need a couple of years to develop. Here we are in year 3, and it doesn't seem like they have any confidence in putting him out on the field. So,
and I'm not certainly like blaming this, but like, could there be a world where you had a true freshman ready? Like, this guy's going to be a great player. All right, this is early, but this guy's got it. Or is that unreasonable to have that on the board here, that like an Ian Moore type or somebody would have been ready for this right now?
I don't think that's unreasonable. No, I mean, it's not an ideal situation, but I think Ohio State should have guys it thinks can play.
Yeah.
And that
Luke Montgomery is a big time Ohio recruit, right? Mm-hmm. And he was not the next guy up as part of this, whether that was at left tackle or whether that was at guard and then slide Donovan Jackson to tackle, which was plan B when Mahalski got hurt. They're in a lot of, isn't like Ohio State's a plan A program, isn't it?
It should, it should be, yeah. Is that?
And they're not
I don't know that they haven't executed that. Yeah,
they're not a plan A program when it comes to tackle recruitment and development. And so,
yes,
how did that happen? That's how it happened.
Yeah, they're not a plan. Yeah, because I think people might be saying like, well, Parrish Johnson showed up as a 3rd-round pick and they made him into a 1st-round pick. Like, I guess like you do get some credit for that. Where the proof I think is really in the pudding is with guys like what we're talking about. Can you take your more under the radar developmental type prospects and turn them into viable players? And I do not think Ohio State has done that well enough or consistently enough for a pretty long time, like going on a decade.
And then knowing that's the case. So the part of that, I think the most frustrating part for Ohio State fans is that everybody knew this. We all knew this.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody from the coaches to the fans had their fingers crossed that you'd never have to face it. Like, we got five. Thank you, Josh Simmons, for being here. He is a San Diego State miracle. Thank you for being here. I hope we never have to find out how good our swing tackle is. But solve it in the portal. Solve this in the offseason in the portal. Like, how are you here with this? How are you not? Why is there not a portal answer that is your right tackle, Fryer moves to guard, that solves the right guard situation? And now when this injury happens, you say, okay, the portal tackle that we got who's playing right tackle, now he's the left tackle. Fryer's kicking back out the tackle, and we're going to play Shabola or Saraveldic right guard. And that's the next thing. That's what this should be. Honestly, that's what this should be. And that would have been a very logical answer. And you would have been able to bring in a tackle to say, we're going to pay you and we're going to play you, which is what portal guys want. Good portal guys want pay and play. There was opportunity there because they did have openings, and now you would have had an answer. So to know that the recruiting is not a plan A tackle recruiting, and then the development, again, this is Michigan quarterback territory. If you honestly thought you had guys ready to go, you were wrong. You can't even identify what's happening on your own roster. You're either unable to do it or you're lying to yourself. And so if you had an opportunity to solve this in the portal and you really thought to yourself as a staff, no, we're okay, you were wrong. Or you knew this was the case and then you couldn't execute in the portal when everybody's talking about your $20 million NIL roster, but you left this gaping hole. And then why did Brett Bielema go get 2 tackles in the portal and Ohio State didn't? So then it's like a failure. Is it a failure of identification or a failure of execution? But I don't think any part of this is defensible. That was the left tackle situation that they put out there, and nobody thought it would be good, and it was worse than people expected. I think it's indefensible.
I agree with that. The thing that I maybe find most concerning about it is how Ryan Day and Justin Fry to a lesser extent, because we didn't talk to him all that much, but definitely Ryan Day, how much he talked about Ohio State's improved offensive line depth in the offseason. They had the hand, foot, and mouth disease thing that kept a lot of guys out of practice and camp, and then they had to play guys in different spots, like played Austin Saravel to tackle, had to play Zem Wahalski more. And like all Ryan Day talked about was like, we had to put guys in weird spots. And we think we came out of that with much better depth. If you're really good about where we are. And then the first time they had to dip into that, it was like, what are you talking about? This is not what it needs to be. So again, like, is Ryan Day just saying the things he feels like he needs to say to keep the media off of his back? Or did he assess that in practice and truly think that it was up to the Ohio State standard? Because if it's the latter, that is a huge issue. Not only about a Ryan Day's evaluation of things, but I also maybe don't think it says tremendous things about the defense if that were actually happening in practice and those guys look good. So yeah, there's no way to defend it. I don't really think there's much in the many pathways to work around it now moving forward. My guess is that they'll put Donovan Jackson there. Is that what you think they're going to do against Penn State?
So listen, now we're back to I think like one of my I like to, aren't I about sunshines and rainbows? Aren't I a sunshine and rainbows kind of guy? Don't you think so?
Yeah. That's the first thing people say. Hey, what's Doug about? I say sunshine and rainbows. Yeah.
But like the thing, like to see a problem, to create a problem, see the problem, recognize the problem, do nothing about the problem, and then be done in by the problem is like you're getting $10 million a year. Like that's where this is where I am. So now we're back to here. Kevin Wilson said Donovan Jackson is the second most talented offensive lineman he had ever been around as a young guy behind, who was it? Who was the Oklahoma guy? Is it Orlando Brown? Who turned into like an All-American?
It was, Trent Williams.
He was Trent Williams.
Yeah.
So like that. So this is one of those where sometimes it's like the media. It's like Kevin Wilson got up there and told us that when Donovan Jackson was young. Okay. So if that's what we're talking about, raw talent when he gets here, then you should be able to, in a pinch, help Donovan Jackson get ready to play left tackle and find somebody to play guard. Whether it's Luke Montgomery, whether it's Austin Sareveld, whether it's Carson Hinsman, who was a Power 5 starter a year ago. And that, by the way, do you have any questions about like how dysfunctional the center position was last year? The guy who was the starting center all of last year, like, can't get on the field now.
Yeah, he's like the fifth guard. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like lineman 9 for a team that didn't do anything in the portal. So like, this is where we are. So that is a imperfect but logical solution.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get that ready, Donovan Jackson is a talented veteran player. To play him out of position is uncomfortable, but not unreasonable. So that has to be the answer. And then you have two veterans squeezing that guard, McLaughlin and Jackson next to him. And by the way, Saraveld's been playing. So you're not putting in somebody who's never done this. And to your point, do you think it's possible that solution, the next solution, could look much better than the first solution, which will only make us say, why was that your first solution? Because I certainly think it's possible that left tackle Donovan Jackson, left guard Austin Sareveld will be quite a bit better than what they were doing on Saturday.
I still don't think it's going to be great, but I think it'll be. I think it could be better.
You just
because the thing about it is
rainbow, Landis. Come on, man.
Like, Donovan Jackson hasn't played well this year, right? So it's like, oh, put him at tackle, he'll be better. It's like, no, okay. I don't know that I believe that. And even Austin Sareveld, who I thought played really well to start the year, the couple of times they put him out there the last few games, I don't think he's played that well. I think their young, inexperienced guards, Tager and Austin Sareveld, are encountering some issues as the talent on the other side of the ball keeps getting better and better. And Donovan Jackson, who is your veteran, who's supposed to be your best offensive lineman, I don't think has played up to that level really for his whole entire career, but certainly not this year. So it is an imperfect solution, but I do think I still think you maybe stand to get some better results from it than you would if you just persisted with Zen Mahalski there.
Yeah. For those who are trying to get excited about Austin Sareveld, like maybe playing more snaps, do not watch the sequence that led to the missed Jaden Fielding field goal, where I think on second down, Zen Mahalski fell down. He blocked the edge guy initially and then fell down, and that guy hit Will Howard and forced a fumble that Ohio State recovered. And then on third down, at right guard, Austin Sareveld got smoked, and Zen Mahalski also gave up a pressure, and both those guys chased down Will Howard and forced him to run, so they couldn't convert that third down, and then they missed a field goal. So, like, there are parts, like, don't watch it. I watched it, so you don't have to. Don't watch it.
Don't go back and watch those plays. Don't go back and watch the counter play where two offensive linemen ran into each other because one guy pulled the wrong way.
It's
like, how does it happen?
October.
How does it happen? They were off. They didn't have a game. How are they not ready? It's infuriating that they played so. How do you have your worst game of the year off of a loss when you had 2 weeks to prepare across the board? I don't get it.
This is which is why we can't buy the "is it just a weird game" thing, because it wasn't that weird. It was like,
I mean, guys running into each other is weird. Like, objectively, that's weird. But why now? I guess, like, let that happen against Akron, not against Nebraska.
Yeah, that's why you played 3 horrible non-conference games to figure this stuff out, because this wasn't for entertainment value. This is a weirdness of their own making. You just have not seen an offensive lineman whiff and fall down as much as, and like the other times, there were times when, and it was weird, like the fact that they couldn't run. I actually thought Zen Mahalski was much better in the run game than he was in the pass game.
His run blocking wasn't bad. I think the couple of times where maybe it looked like his side of the line wasn't getting the job done, it was maybe more about Donovan Jackson or whichever tight end was there, because their tight end blocking was awful in this game too.
Now, it wasn't perfect, because there was a play. One of his whiffs came on a run play where Trevion Henderson got tackled by the guy that he whiffed on. And it was like Trayvon's trying to run up the middle, and here comes a guy all the way off the edge because Zen barely gets a hand on him and tackles him from backside pursuit. So like, but it wasn't, I actually thought they were better off. Like the times they ran, Joel Klass talked about this during the game, that they've liked to run to the left, and now he felt like they're going to have to start running to the right. I actually thought when they ran to the left, like run at Zen and just say like, you have to block the guy across from you. I actually thought that wasn't terrible. When it was like asking anything more, asking anything that other than was like step forward and put your arms on the guy right in front of you, that's when it got a little wild. So, there was even like it was almost like a setup. The Will Howard run on the go-ahead touchdown drive when Will pulled it and ran left, that was created in part by the guy Zen was blocking, taking an inside move because he's like, I'm going to beat this guy on the inside. And then he went inside. And then Will Howard's like, I'm going to keep this and go around the edge. It was like, oh, like it was almost like, let's have our left tackle play so poorly that like this guy's going to try to smoke him and create a gap for the quarterback to keep it.
Yeah, I think Will, if I'm remembering correctly how he described that play after the game, that he was anticipating reading that defender, but then that defender kind of didn't do his job the way he was supposed to. So then Will read a second level defender instead. So like he switched on the fly who he was reading based on how that defensive lineman ended up playing that play. But yeah, they were trying to use the fact that Zen was struggling to block people to set up a pull for Howard. Yeah.
Because I think it got the Nebraska guy out of his fundamentals, because he was like, I know what I'm supposed to do here, but I'm just going to smoke this guy instead.
Yeah.
It's like, why didn't you do his job? It's like, have you seen what's been happening the whole game? This is free money. Let me go get mine. And then it was like, whoop, there goes Will Howard. So, okay. I don't it's just that's not, he shouldn't be in that situation.
Correct.
That shouldn't be your sixth lineman. That was one injury. That was one
the thing
injury.
about it is that he's not their sixth lineman. Like Austin Sareveld has been their sixth lineman. And also they talked about their confidence in Austin having to play tackle if they needed him to, because of how well he did it in camp. And then he also, I think probably by that point was more experienced than Zen, at least in high leverage snaps, but they still put Zen out there anyway. I'm not saying that Austin Sareveld would have definitely played better at left tackle, but all of the context of that situation should have pointed to Austin Sareveld playing at left tackle instead of Zen,
which is what you guessed.
Yeah.
That's why you guessed it. So I guess you can say that he's not the sixth lineman, but except they had one injury and they put him in, and they did have other things. Because now what they did once he got hurt, if Sareveld is like play your best five, how often do coaches talk about play your best five, right?
Right.
So what's your best five? Then figure it out. If Mahovsky's not part of your best five when Josh Simmons is out for the year, then figure it out. Then either play Sareveld at tackle or play Jackson at tackle and play Sareveld and Shabola as your two guards. That's what coaching is. Coach. Make decisions. Know your personnel. So it's like phase one, recruitment. Okay, we think the offensive line has not been up to snuff. Stage 2, development. Okay, we think the offensive line has not been up to snuff. But then stage 3 this is where we are. Make the best decision possible. And that was a failure. Level 1 failure, level 2 failure, level 3 failure. I don't know that there's anything worse than not knowing your own personnel. Well, this is what we have. Let's make the best of it. That was not making the best of it. Your idea was making the best of it. Be creative. You had a bye week. Really, indefensible to me. And again, if Justin Fry wants to call us on the phone and tell us, hey man, in practice we tried to do whatever, then call us. But the idea that whatever the other option was worse than that, oh my God, then we're back to stage 1 and stage 2 are fireable. If the other options were worse than that, where are you?
Yeah. I don't know how much they considered other options. I think maybe I've mentioned this. I did try to ask that on Wednesday of Ryan Day. Did you consider any other guys? How quickly did you settle on Zen? And he just answered in a way that made it sound like they didn't really consider any other guys. That they left Eugene thinking like Zen's our left tackle moving forward, when they had an extra week of practice, although not a full week because it was an off week. I think they practiced 3 times, and guys, I think, went home for the weekend, which is not out of the ordinary on college football off weeks. But I just thought, I thought there was going to be a competition, like a fierce competition to replace Josh Simmons. And it just felt like they just, nope, Zen, you're the oldest one. You got it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, it's fine. I'm sure it'll be, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Wow. Okay. Is there anything else besides offensive line, or should we just leave our listeners and viewers in a puddle about how disastrous this is for the national title contending Ohio State Buckeyes?
Yeah, there's a couple other things. So there was a lot of Dalton said, I really like what the defense did today, excluding some penalties and the run defense. It's like, okay, I like what the defense did, except for this and this. If they can play like that against Penn State, I think we have a path for a good season. What did you think of the defense?
I thought that Nebraska did not stress that defense very much. They did seem to get more pressure at opportune moments, but I thought they got helped out by some things. Certainly, the second drive when Nebraska hit the 30-yard pass down the sideline, that was initially ruled a catch and then overturned. I think it was the right call to overturn it. But again, there's an opportunity there for that guy to hold on to the ball a little bit better, and that would have hurt Ohio State. There was the 7th drive for Nebraska. Jalen McClain made a great play on the ball. Do you remember that play? He made a great play on a pass. Yeah. And then the next play, Dante Dowdell popped it through a hole on the left side, and Caleb Downs made a touchdown saving tackle. I thought that was there were probably at least 2 touchdown saving tackles, where if we're playing banana angles, Ohio State, you know who doesn't make that touch? I won't say it. Can I think I might have fallen asleep Friday night and dreamt this. I think I did dream it. This can't be real. Does Bryson Shaw still play for USC?
He does. Yeah.
No, stop it. That was real life.
I don't know. He's on the roster. I don't know how much he actually plays.
I think they had an injury and they put him in as a backup. And I heard the name. It's 1:00 in the morning. You're watching Rutgers USC with half an ear because you're actually watching UNLV Boise State. And I heard the name and I was like, what are you talking about? There's some banana angle safeties.
He had not played. He made one start. He started against Wisconsin, but otherwise had been a backup. But then he started and played 54 snaps against Rutgers.
I think, okay, because they had an injury.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs is saving you, which is what safeties are supposed to do. But also, I thought they were playing on the edge multiple times. We talked about some of the pass interference calls, and I don't know how much you guys talked about this. The last, I got to look what drive it was. There was a drive late where they flipped a little swing pass out to the flat, and if Cody Simon doesn't make that tackle in the open field, I think it has a chance to go because they had some blockers out in front otherwise, and he made a great open field tackle. It might have been the play before the interception, actually.
I think it was. Nebraska, I agree with you that Nebraska did not stress Ohio State. Ohio State's defense got the stop, so Ohio State's defense, the box score looks pretty nice with 3 sacks and 13 tackles for loss. I told you this before we started recording. Dylan Raiola completed 11 passes behind the line of scrimmage for 28 yards. They were just trying to screen them to death because I do think they were worried about getting sacked and turning the ball over coming off of the Indiana game. And I will credit Ohio State's defense for they were, I don't know that they were ever surprised by a screen. Cody Simon was a madman. Cody Simon by himself stopped a few of them. Denzel Burke stopped 2 of them. Ohio State had Nebraska's screen game down cold. There was nothing that Nebraska could do there. But I also think it makes some of the perceived progress of the defense a little misleading, or at least I'm not at the defense figured its stuff out coming off of this game because of the way that Nebraska tried to play. I think if they played a team that was more aggressive throwing the ball down the field, it could have looked a lot different. Because I did not love what I saw from Denzel Burke. Then Davis Igbinosun was far too physical to the point of getting 3 pass interference penalties. and while like to my naked eye, it did feel like Ohio State was pressuring Dylan Raiola more. The PFF has a pressure rate of like 17%, which like doesn't make any sense. It's like with the Oregon game, the pressure rate was super high. I was like, well, that doesn't feel right. And then in this game, the pressure rate's super low. I was like, well, that doesn't really feel right either. But yeah, only 7 of 39 dropbacks. So they have him actually being pressured in this game.
I thought a couple. I think you mentioned like JT Tuimoloau. I was like 2 best plays in the game. He wasn't blocked.
No one blocked him.
Like there was some of that stuff where it's like, oh, what a great play. Why didn't you block that guy? I thought like the 2 best individual plays for Nebraska's offense were the 38-yard Dylan Raiola run, which is again Ohio State's blitzing, they're stunting, they're getting guys out of gaps, they're playing man coverage behind it and turning their back, and then a guy who can't scramble just scrambles for 38 yards. And then their other one, it was on their touchdown drive, like a crosser to Thomas Fidone, where Caleb Downs ran into the official. And that's how he got open, like a pick play by the official, which is again, like, that's not like, I'm not blaming the Ohio State defense, but it's like, well, what did Nebraska do to like really stress? It's like, okay, they got help with that. Right. And then I thought there was like a big play that got called back on a pass interference offensively that Joel Klatt was mad about, that he thought it was a bad call there. I just thought
they dropped the one early too, that Denzel got beat down the sideline.
Yep, and Raiola missed a throw in the end zone. Like he missed at least 2. And then to your point, like the interception that they got set up in the red zone, when they picked off Will Howard, they got stuffed. They got stopped on 4th and 1. Then they stopped Ohio State. Ohio State had to punt. Then Nebraska took over like it's the Ohio State 40, and then punted on that drive. So they got an interception. Nebraska got an interception that set them up inside the 10 and didn't get points off of it and didn't get ancillary points off of it. They got nothing out of all that field position where a more competent offense.
But that's good for Ohio State. Yeah, but that's I don't want to like totally write off the effort of Ohio State's defense there to stop that either.
I don't. It was a very good goal line stand. Let's talk about that first. Can we talk about that sequence? Do people ask about that? The pick into the goal line stand.
There weren't any real questions about it, but certainly was a pivotal point in the game. Yeah.
What did you think of the pick that Will Howard threw there?
I thought it was a nice coverage call by Nebraska to have that corner kind of fall off and end up being in a position that Will Howard was not expecting him to be in. But then he also, I thought he kind of rushed the throw, and then because he rushed the throw, it was a misfire and it was high, which allowed the interception to happen. Because I do think Emeka Egbuka, he was open enough to get him the ball, but the throw was just not what it needed to be.
Yeah. Okay. Here I found the drive charts for that. So I think the stuff is good, right? They kind of, I don't know that it was a good goal line stand. You get credit defensively for a goal line stand, and when they tried to dive over the top, Ohio State met them at the goal line and made the physical play that you needed to there. Once Nebraska got it back, they had Jamal Banks was wide open down the sideline on like a wheel route, and there was no coverage, and Dylan Raiola missed him. And I think half of Power 4 quarterbacks hit that throw, and it's a touchdown. So that, and then Ohio State got a sack on the next play. They gave like a weird look and created like an unblocked guy. Who was unblocked? I can't read my notes, but like, I think like to Ohio State's credit, then they got a critical sack to sort of knock them out of field goal position and sort of end that drive. But there was an opportunity. There was a play to be made on that drive that the Ohio State defense didn't do anything to stop it. And Nebraska had a wide open guy and the freshman quarterback missed him. So, you get credit defensively for doing that. But to me, like if we're trying to project ahead, it's like, I think Drew Aller makes that throw. That's the kind of thing that I think Curtis Work makes that throw. Curtis
Work makes the throw. Yeah. And that might be it on Ohio State's remaining schedule. But the point is that they're playing two games against Penn State and Indiana that if Ohio State plays the way it played on Saturday, it can lose, and I think probably would lose.
And just that, like,
far more competent.
And especially from a defensive side, like, so that Ohio State's defense, that Ohio State, you do have to give credit to Ohio State's defense. Nebraska did like nothing early in the game, right? I mean, that without that scramble which Ohio State's defense kind of allowed, but like that's one big play. That's fine. Otherwise, Ohio State's defense was like not really letting Nebraska do anything. I mean, like we're talking about.
Yeah, like a couple other runs popped. A couple runs popped for like 12, 15 yards, but weren't 40 yards, as you mentioned.
I'm looking at like Nebraska's 5th drive. Nebraska has a 3rd and 3. They get a penalty to now make it a 3rd and 8, and then they try to throw like a little tunnel screen or something, and Ohio State absolutely destroys it. So it's like, okay, like Nebraska maybe don't get a penalty, don't flinch on 3rd and 3 to create a 3rd and 8, but then so that's like, okay, well, maybe a better team doesn't do that. But to Ohio State's credit, then when Nebraska tried to run the play, they were all over it with the call and the execution. So like you absolutely do get credit for that. I don't know. I do think the defense played fine. They were not stressed is my main thing. Oregon stressed them far more. Like I just would like to emphasize like how little I thought Nebraska stressed them. They just did not have. And when they did have opportunities, the young, that one throw, that's a huge critical throw. Imagine if Will Howard doesn't hit like Jeremiah Smith runs wide open down the seam and Will Howard misses him. Like Nebraska had that too. Nebraska had a wide open guy for a touchdown and they missed him. And Ohio State hit it. So, like, what does that mean? Credit to Ohio State. Credit to having a veteran quarterback who made those throws, who we had wondered about Will Howard's deep ball ability. And maybe the Carnell Tate one was a little bit underthrown, but not too underthrown. And Carnell Tate made a great play, and he hit Jeremiah Smith right on the hands, and he caught it. So, like, that you absolutely get credit for that. But the point is, there will be other quarterbacks down the road for Ohio State where if this defense gives up some of the opportunities it gave up, I think other teams will be more ready to take advantage than Nebraska was.
Yes. I did like that the defense like clearly came into this game with more in the way of stunts and twists and a couple of blitz and like sending more than 4 at times. It wasn't like a super heavy blitz rate. It was actually a little less than I thought it was when I was like watching it initially, but still I think a high blitz rate given what Jim Knowles has done here previously. And I liked all of that. I didn't think much of it looked great. But if it's like a change, you got to keep repping it. And I guess like with time that can like keep on getting better. So I think maybe they had some better ideas in this game. The execution at times was just lacking, but at least they saw issues against Oregon and then came into this game just not trying to do the same thing over and over again and hoping it would work better. So that's if that's what's encouraging to people, then I think I agree with that. There was just there were a couple of opportunities that I did not think Nebraska seized. That those happen in every game. Like
sure.
So like,
absolutely,
Ohio State doesn't always seize its opportunities either. Like that's part of football. Sometimes you just get a little bit lucky that way. I'm just still a little nervous, I guess, about better teams maybe seizing them in a different way than Nebraska did.
And like even so on Nebraska's one touchdown, right? Ohio State blitzed the safety. Was it Downs? I can't remember who it was, but they blitzed him right up the middle, and he was untouched and he got through. And Raiola saw the hot receiver and they ran a smidge of a pick play. I don't think Denzel Burke actually ran into the other receiver, but he kind of had to try to go around him a little bit.
Yeah.
And it got him a little bit off balance. But if the safety's not blitzing, the safety's there to be part of that play. And Raiola threw right into the opening created by the blitz. And so it's like, okay, there's Ohio State being aggressive in a goal line situation, and they gave up a touchdown. So, I mean, that happens when you are going to be aggressive. I understand that, but it's just the reminder of aggression is good, but also aggression doesn't always work either. And so that was one time when Nebraska did make Ohio State pay for that. And if you get overly aggressive, then again, Curtis Rourke and Drew Aller and whoever you might see down the road in the playoff, Dylan Gabriel, if you see him again, will be more equipped to make you pay than Nebraska was.
Yeah. I want to hit this question. I thought it was good to point out because I had been thinking it, and I've seen texts after other games to this point, but we haven't really talked about it much. Will said, I can't believe I have to type this, but how can our special teams be so bad? Brandon Ennis looks like he's running in slow motion on kickoff. So I think maybe this is more of the point that people are fired up about. Our kicker can't make a field goal and our punter has a weak leg. Ohio State is a top 5 program. How do we not have a good kicker and punter? Obviously, Jaden Fielding missed a field goal in this game. Ohio State currently is 85th in the country in punting average, just like pure yardage average at 41.7. I don't know how much of a factor it's been yet, but I do think the lack of a punter who can really flip the field and help or create a field position advantage for Ohio State could become a problem. Like, it seems to me like something that's kind of like a little bit below the surface that maybe in a bigger game might come to the forefront a little bit. And they have like a big legged punter in Nick McClarty, the guy they just got from Australia, the freshman, but they've not, I think maybe they've used him in a game one time, and it was when the game was out of hand. They've been going with Joe McGuire, who I think has been consistent, but also just doesn't have a big leg. So like I actually think that could be a bit of an issue too. And then obviously that it was a little windy in the shoe, but that field goal attempt by Jaden Fielding did not inspire a lot of confidence. Do you have any concerns about the kicking game for Ohio State?
Yeah. The Fielding thing, how long was that Fielding field goal? Wasn't it a little bit longer?
47 maybe.
Okay.
Look here. Yeah,
I had been wondering, it's like one of those things you don't want to come out like, I had been wondering if Jaden Fielding wasn't quite as good as the stats have indicated. That, like, has he really? I don't know. This is a team that lost a chance at a national championship because they didn't make a 50-yard field goal. A bunch of other things happened. In a
42 yards
in a modern college football situation where like guys are drilling field goals all the time. Like guys.
Nebraska's kicker was drilling field goals yesterday.
Like guys drill field goals now. So, and the punter thing, they have 3 punters.
So yeah, so they have Joe McGuire. No. So Joe McGuire is the guy they got from Pro Kick Australia last year. Okay. And then Nick McClarty is the guy they got from Pro Kick Australia this year. And then Anthony Veneri is the guy they got from Buffalo, who like actually had big game punting experience, and he's not playing.
Okay.
And he's not been like on the injury report or anything like that. So I'm not, and he also, I think, is not a guy that has a tremendous leg either, but it's a little puzzling to me that they brought in a starting punter and now he's not the one who's punting. Yeah.
Very reasonable criticism. And again, Parker Fleming's not here to take all the blame. So with what you can do with the staff, there's no reason to not be throwing money at somebody who can help your punters punt good. So if that's not happening, I don't know that the guys they have in here, I don't think this is like, oh, they missed in recruit. I mean, it feels like this is like drafting a fantasy team. And it's like, I'm just thinking I'm going to like really invest in punters. Aren't these all, wouldn't you think these all fit the profile of like a P4 power conference punter? They have 3 of them probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, plenty of teams go get their guys from Pro Kick Australia.
Yeah.
And kind of throw them out there when they're pretty green, which Joe McGuire was to start this year and Nick McClarty still is. So it's not a bad process to find a punter, but punting should be a weapon for Ohio State.
Yes.
It has been for Ohio State's best teams, and it is definitely not for this team.
And this is one of those things, again, I think we're a little bit trapped in a vortex of often Ohio State has so much talent that you don't have to worry about the margins as much. And I've often been on this side of things that Ohio State's goal in the punt return game is just to catch it and get that offense on the field. And that is a good plan. Let the teams who don't have Ohio State's offensive firepower try to get punt returns for touchdowns, or let's rip off a 40-yarder to get a short field. Ohio State doesn't need that. You just want to make sure the guy doesn't drop it, because here comes CJ Stroud. So then if your offense is not quite that, right, and they didn't have a run game and there wasn't any efficiency on Saturday, then it's like, oh, man, you kind of would like to have a punt return. Listen, Oregon does not beat Boise State this year without special teams. They had a punt return by their number 1 receiver for a touchdown, and they had a kick return by their backup running back, who was an absolute important part of their offense, who has 75 touches on offense this year. This is like a real guy who ran a kickback for a touchdown. And if they did not get those, they would have lost. Did you see Iowa? I'm going to say his name. Is it Wheatgen, the Iowa punt returner?
Yeah, Weegen.
Sweegen shot out of a cannon yesterday. Punt return touchdown against Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see that with Ohio State. So
they did put Caleb Downs back on Saturday, which is not he's not a catch the ball guy. He's a make something happen guy.
But nothing happened. I'm not saying that's his fault, but nothing happened.
He had the one return where he got a little wiggly, but I think only ended up gaining like 8 or so yards. Yeah.
So maybe they're creeping toward that, but I mean, I don't want to be hypocritical about it. I'm usually on the side of like, man, I don't want to risk my best players getting hurt on a punt return. It would destroy you. Like, what are you doing? If Caleb Downs got abducted by aliens in the middle of the punt return, you'd never hear the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are good teams out there making plays on special teams, and Ohio State's not one of them. So the head coach is not a play caller on offense anymore. And I guess he spent a lot of time with the defense the past couple of weeks, but like, this is an opportunity where shouldn't you be, all right, Ryan Day's here. He's going to help with special teams, and we don't have a full-time special teams coach, but like, we're going to get after it on that. And it doesn't feel like it does not feel like it is a weapon for them anywhere. Right?
No, it doesn't. It feels still very much like an afterthought, which I wasn't anticipating. Like I thought that the shift away from Parker Fleming to getting more of the staff involved and having Ryan Day kind of being at the top of that pyramid, but being more involved in special teams than he has been at any point prior to his head coaching tenure we'd feel and see a tangible difference with the operation. Yep. And I don't know that we have. We haven't. So,
and you and I watch enough other games now for Kings of the North that most weeks you will see a punt block or a field goal block. And like, when you go back and watch, it's like, oh my God, they had 5 guys who were ready to tear the punter's leg off. What a great, whatever they did, the other guys couldn't block it. And you do not feel that with Ohio State.
No, it feels like they don't practice it. It feels like they don't practice special teams. Like they have to know who the guys are who they're going to put out there. But maybe they spend 5 minutes a week on making sure they know how to line up, and then just hope nothing bad happens.
And this, in the past, right? Denzel Ward has blocked punts to change games. That's future number 4 pick in the draft. Denzel Ward, Chris Olave, like their best players going all out. You know what Ohio State has a lot of that should help on special teams? Speed.
Mm-hmm. So Terry McLaurin's like a Hall of Fame gunner. Yeah.
That they are not in a world where it feels like the special teams units are weaponized. And again, like a lot of the time when everything else is working, just make sure we get the ball. Let's make sure we can make a 32-yard field goal, because frankly, if it's in the 50 range, we're probably going to go for it anyway and whatever. But now when all those things aren't humming at 100% efficiency, it's like, well, where else can they find something? And now we're back to the inches discussion. Where else can they find something? Let's look to special teams. And it's like, nope, not over here. Mm-hmm. It's fine. It's not a weapon.
It's not. One more question. We can wrap up.
Sunshine and rainbows on a Sunday morning, talking about the Buckeyes and a national title chase. Woo!
I want to
play some leaves. Hey, everybody! It's sunshine and rainbows. Their special teams blows. Doesn't blow.
We have definitely at times been the show that tries to pull people back from the edge of thinking this is a disaster, but. And maybe not being there with this game makes us sound hypocritical, but I just don't think this was a good game. Eric says, I do not trust these coaches to get the team ready to play anymore. Is that a reasonable stance with where Ohio State is right now?
So going along with what you just said, this did change things a little bit for me. I thought this was a disappointing enough performance by Ohio State with all the things we just talked about, off a loss, off a bye, against a good competitive team, but not one that's going to push you to the wall, not one that's going to be nearly as creative as Andy Kotelnicki and Penn State's offense is going to be next week, not one with nearly as many defensive playmakers as Penn State's going to have next week. I mean, it is, right? Is that not true? Offensive creativity and defensive playmakers, which are two huge things. It is night and day between Penn State and Nebraska. Do you think that's fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this changed a little bit for me, like much more. And we were talking about this on Saturday night, that maybe you had more concerns about Ohio State coming off Oregon. I was much more, okay, like on the rewatch, I do see the issues. I see the mistakes they made, but much more good game, high level game, great teams on the road, 1 point loss. He gets down 1 second earlier. Maybe Ohio State wins that game. I thought this was a incredibly disappointing performance from a coaching standpoint. So, would I say fans should be out? No, but I think there are much more reasonable worries about Penn State and Indiana from a ready to play coaching standpoint. Get them over the top, take care of business, take advantage of opportunities kind of way. That again, and maybe it's not James Franklin, maybe it's not that, because we know James Franklin's history against Ohio State, but Andy Kotelnicki and what they try to do and the way they push the envelope offensively. If you're an Ohio State fan who has not watched that, they're just trying stuff. They really are trying. It doesn't always work, but they are going to push Ohio State. And then again, Jalen Reed makes a huge pick six for them against Wisconsin because they have great safety play. Wisconsin's trying to have a last gasp at the end, and Zakee Wheatley makes a tackle, stop them a yard short on 4th down in the open field. That's a great play. They have great safeties. They have transfer corners. They'll get after you up front with 3 very legitimate defensive linemen. There is a lot that is real about Penn State, and I think Kotelnicki has changed the coaching environment. And then Indiana's a freaking machine. That team is as well coached as any team in the country, and they are not going to come into Ohio Stadium and make a bunch of mistakes, I don't think. And the talent disparity is not so great that it's going to be like, okay, like this is a nice little try-hard Indiana team that can't hang with the Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith team. Because frankly, the Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith team, at times, it looks like Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, and what else are we talking about here that's so talented that you can't handle? There's a freshman and a sophomore who are through the roof. And then like, what else is there that's that much better than Mikhail Kamara on the defensive line for Indiana or Elijah Surratt at receiver for Indiana? Like, are we sure? Like, where's the talent disparity? Sometimes it doesn't show up. So, but this is really a preparation, coaching, execution, take advantage of opportunities discussion. I am very much more on alert for Ohio State losing to Penn State or Indiana than I was before this game.
As am I. And we had like we did the do you think Ohio State can still win a national title thing after it lost to Oregon? And I think we both pretty quickly said yes. And I'm not like pushed to a no by what I saw on Saturday, because I guess with the exception of Oregon, a lot of other teams who are in that conversation have had games where they just like really look out of sorts, right? So I don't know if that's comforting to Ohio State fans. I didn't say it to be. I just think that's the kind of the nature of the sport, is that the perceived dominant powers all kind of have some stuff going on, including Ohio State. So, and Ohio State still has talent that I think can get it there if it like gets its head screwed on straight.
Yes,
but this was not an encouraging sign to, I think, make you super confident about that. I think if you're all the way like this team still has everything in front of it, Ohio State's going to get the job done, you just really believe in the Buckeyes, and that's fine. Like you're gonna be behind them no matter what, and that's totally fine. I'm not gonna criticize anybody for that. I just don't know what else you're grabbing onto if that's where you're at right now. So like I don't think Eric, or who asked the question or made the comment, excuse me, about not trusting the staff to get the team ready, or anyone else who feels that way, is off base based off what we've seen from this team in the last 2 games, and especially this most recent game.
Ohio State got put in a position where they had to convert a 4th down on their go-ahead touchdown drive in the final 6 minutes, or they would have lost. So that's how close this was. And they ran a good play on 4th down, but sometimes you can call a great play and the guy's wide open and whatever. The wind takes the pass, somebody slips. Like you're putting yourself in a situation as a 25.5 point favorite where if somebody slips, you lose. Like that's how close that was.
They are Ryan Day's thing all year. Leave no doubt. Can't leave it up to one play. And they constantly do it.
They constantly do it.
It's like, maybe stop saying it, because now you're just sort of speaking it into existence.
Now, to the point, and context is needed here. Oregon is the team I think that rises above this conversation the most, and Ohio State played them down to the wire at their place, which they'll never have to do again.
Sure. Yeah.
So they went toe-to-toe with, I think, what appears to be the most complete team in the country. And everybody has stuff like this. Texas beat Vanderbilt by 3, right? Like this is, but Ohio State is not above the muck. The muck is high-level muck this year. Because even Oregon, as we said, if they don't get 2 special teams returns, they lose to Boise. So I think Oregon has done a good job of figuring things out the last month, but they're not infallible. I think they're the top of the heap, but there's no super team, and Ohio State still has the second best national title odds as we record this on Sunday morning. Georgia plus 340, Ohio State plus 450, Oregon plus 475, Texas plus 500, and then Penn State's next at plus 1300. So there's 4 still odds-on favorites to win the national title. That's the best thing going for Ohio State. That there really is not. The only team you would point to is like, man, those guys got it. Ohio State did everything but win against them on the road. So, but what the point, I think the point, right, is maybe by this point of the year, given their talent, given their experience, it would have been reasonable to think there's a great big pile of muck and Ohio State's above it as we get ready for November. That was very much on the table, and that is not at all where we are.
Or at the very, I think yes, that's true with all the conversations we had about how this roster was built. But even if you wanted to stop short of that, you would expect a team that is as veteran and talent laden as Ohio State to be on a clear upward trajectory as we enter November, and it's not either, right? And maybe I don't know how many teams across the country you'd point to and say definitely are. Like, I think Oregon is. I think Georgia probably is. Clemson, I think, has been for a little bit now. So it's not like there are 15 teams that are like on a rocket ship to play in their best football in the postseason. But Ohio State is not on that track yet, and it needs to get on it quickly because November is going to present some real challenges.
Do we want to, before we get out of here, Will Howard, 13 of 16 for 221, 3 touchdowns, the 1 pick, 8 carries, 14 yards. Were there many questions or comments about Will Howard? Because what did that game do for you, for the QB?
There actually wasn't, at least that I saw, like going through, there wasn't a whole lot of specific Will Howard. I didn't grab it, so I don't have it verbatim. There was one question about just like, does Will Howard actually like kind of have it thing, which is like we've gotten a version of that question, I think, almost after every game, including the Oregon game where I thought he played really well. I mean, I think he should have thrown it more. I think the offensive line struggles did speed him up a little bit, and it was most noticeable on the interception. But he only threw 16 passes, and in a game where Ohio State cannot run the ball, like that's not enough. That would not with the receiver. Even if you are having issues blocking things, that's not enough. So I would have liked to see him throw it more. If I gave him a grade, I'd give him like a B maybe. And I think he could have run it more too. He was asked about that specifically after the game. He's always answered questions about that with like, I am willing to run, I'm ready to run kind of stuff. While stopping short too of like he's not like criticizing play calling, but I think suggesting that maybe they don't. He said like we didn't have a ton of it in the game plan for this game, and obviously they went to it late when they had to get that game-winning touchdown drive. I still think they can do it more, and that to me again is not a conversation about Will Howard's willingness to do it. It's about Chip Kelly and Ryan Day's comfort level with. I was going to say comfortability. I stopped myself. Comfort level with calling those things for Will Howard more frequently and calling them earlier in games.
So there was one where he handed it off and he should have pulled it, like everybody was crashing and the running back got destroyed in the backfield. And it was like, if he had kept it, there was something there. Again, let's imagine a world where Jeremiah Smith runs right by everybody down the middle of the field and Will Howard overthrows him. And we are in quarterback on the helmet, Ryan Day with his hands on his knees on the sideline mode. And they don't have that touchdown and where Ohio State would be today. So Jeremiah Smith is a monster. Someone's got to get the ball in his hands. He put it on his hands. So like, it was that has that not been our, like, a thing that our fans and texters have been asking about? Will
Yeah.
Howard in the deep ball, like he had to hit that throw, and he hit it.
He hit it. That was his best one of the year, his best like downfield throw of the year, I think.
So if we're talking ascending, right? Like that was an ascending. Okay, that was a play, and I don't think we have a lot of Will Howard stuff because people aren't worried about Will Howard.
I don't think there's a ton of concern about him. Do we want to talk about what he said about Penn State now, or do you want to save it for maybe when we talk more specifically about that game?
Maybe save it. Downingtown zone.
Downingtown zone. That's right.
Downingtown zone. Maybe save it. Maybe save it.
I think it's good to save it because he's going to talk. I imagine he's going to talk on Tuesday, unless they don't want to put him back out there after what he said after the game. But
yeah,
if he talks on Tuesday, we'll have the opportunity to see if he brings that same energy after not being in the post game emotional state that he was in, because he was pretty fired up after that game.
Okay,
like borderline angry, I think, about how ineffective the offense was.
Okay. So do you want to do Bill Landis's lists of most concerning things for Ohio State heading into Penn State? Just real quick, based off this game, where they are as a team.
Number one by far is left tackle. I guess like with that is run game issues, right? Didn't run it well against Oregon, didn't run it well against Nebraska. Yep. I think probably need to run it against Penn State, if anything, to like kind of keep the dogs off a little bit. Yep. And then I would point to, it's hard to say because we don't know who's going to play quarterback for Penn State. I would as we sit here on Sunday, I think it'll be Drew Aller, because like he was still on the sideline, he was like walking around and stuff. He wasn't like on crutches, didn't have anything on his leg when he hurt his knee against Wisconsin. So I'm thinking it'll be Aller. What do you think?
So if people didn't watch that game, we were watching that. I thought initially, so Drew Aller did not play in the second half against Wisconsin. He got hurt in the last minute of the first half, limped into the locker room, came out with a left knee brace on, warmed up and couldn't go. And then Bo Pribula played in the second half. The sack that he got hurt on, I actually thought it looked more maybe like he just got stretched a weird way, and maybe it was more like a groin or a hamstring or something. He didn't crumble. He was walking the whole time. So like that reality is something that I thought was very like it didn't look as bad as it turned out to be. I thought, you know what I mean, like that, and so. That's only a discussion just in terms of like, well, you don't know, but to say, I think to believe that he would be able to play in a week is a reasonable thing to think right now, because it wasn't like a crushing bent under him, oh my gosh, kind of situation. So, but also Bo Pribula played pretty well, and it would change the offense, but I don't think it would turn Penn State into entirely non-functional. So,
no, I don't think so either, but I do think, because whatever, say Drew Aller plays, I think his mobility might be somewhat limited, right? That's why they didn't play him. That's why they took him out of the game. James Franklin said they were worried about him being mobile enough for them to run the offense. And they had a viable backup to play in his place.
Yes.
So I guess like on the Penn State quarterback front, it would be one, like if a less than 100% Drew Aller, who doesn't have as much mobility as he normally does, plays, you got to hit him. You got to put him on the ground, that kind of stuff. And then if it's Bo Pribula, you can't be undone by the designed quarterback run game, which you will get a heavy dose of if he's the one who starts on Saturday. And
there is part, and we'll get to this discussion certainly during the week, but Andy Kotelnicki's creativity, who I think could be a real answer to a creative offensive coordinator, a brainiac super athlete at safety. Like Caleb Downs is like, bring me some of this. You're not fooling me.
Yeah. I might we could talk for another hour about, would you just have Caleb Downs follow Ty Warren around?
I might. Game? But the hard thing is that like Nick Singleton's enough of a threat at running back, and they'll throw the ball to him. The receivers are not scary. Like, not the pylon. Like Julian Fleming had like an incredibly crucial drop for them on third down play. I think they are not scary there, but like what they do with the running backs, and you just need to have Caleb Downs around for when Nick Singleton or Katron Allen pop through the first level, and somebody just making sure it's an 11-yard game, not a 51-yard gain. Caleb Downs is first on that list, and if he's following Ty Warren everywhere, like that might you eliminate the possibility of that. Caleb Downs has to be awesome, I think, in the Penn State game, and I think Caleb Downs will be awesome.
Yeah, and I think too, while like I did not love what I saw from Ohio State's corners against Nebraska, and certainly didn't love what I saw against Oregon, I think both of those teams, Oregon definitely, but even Nebraska, I think has better receivers than Penn State. So I would, I guess, like famous last words, whatever. I'd be surprised if that came into play. Like Ohio State not being able to cover Penn State's receivers. I think it's much more of a linebackers and safeties against the running backs and the tight ends.
Yes, I agree. Okay. Left tackle, run game, and then figuring out how Ohio State gets after the quarterback in the Penn State game. We'll talk about that much more this week. We'd invite you guys to join us on Kings of the North, where we do certainly talk about Ohio State a lot. In the context of the North, in addition to everybody else who's playing good Northern football. We'll be back on Wednesday with our Kings of Columbus discussion about this Ohio State-Penn State game, and we always appreciate you guys being a part of it with us. Thanks to our producer, Mike Yorstowski. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of Columbus.